None of that was on, right? Okay, we're good. Go ahead, if you would, and go over to Matthew chapter 5 with me tonight.
There's several.
Right, I'll throw a couple in there for you. Matthew chapter 5. I want to look at some things tonight. We're doing these surveying Christian doctrine and also some practical Christian living, just to kind of let you know where we're headed. Lord's will, in the next coming weeks, we're going to talk about what does the Bible say about church attendance, and we're going to do a study on that, and then we're going to do one each on the 5 activities of worship that the Lord approves of, and obviously with each one of those, there are some things that we can kind of chase off to the side that people might have questions about, or that we need to make sure we understand that I think is distinctive when it comes to the Lord's church according to the Bible. And so we'll be looking at some of those things. But for tonight, I wanted to look at the idea of which law is binding. Talking about the Old Testament, New Testament, understanding the division between the two. An instructor that I had many, many years ago, when he began teaching us kind of a survey of the Bible, would tell us, and he would hold up this one page in your Bible that's basically blank. It says the New Testament on the one side of it, maybe a map on the other side or something like that. But he would say that the most important page in your Bible is that blank page right there. And the idea that he was conveying to us and trying to make us think, in other words, was there are a lot of people out there who do not understand the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, that distinction. One thing that, there are several things that when people visit with the Lord's church here or any Lord's church in our country, that they will notice some things that stand out to them very, very quickly. The type of music that we have. And there are questions about that. If they visit with us repeatedly, they'll say, why do you take the Lord's Supper every week? A lot of places out there, it's just a quarterly or maybe a couple of holidays or once a year or something like that. A lot of different things. Church organization. Why is the Lord's church structured the way it is with elders and deacons and a proper understanding of who the pastor is? Some of the things that we talked about on Sunday a while back. But another one that you'll get pretty frequently is from people who do not understand, is they'll say something like, oh, y'all are the group that do not believe the Old Testament. We've talked about this before. Y'all are the group that don't believe the Old Testament. Well, that's false to begin with. Obviously, we do believe the Old Testament. We believe that it is every word inspired of God, that it is exactly the way God would want it to be, that it's 100% right, that it serves its purpose perfectly. But I do not believe that it's the law that we're under. I believe that we're under the New Testament law. And so sometimes people in the name of wanting to do whatever they want to do in the name of religion, to try to authorize something that you do not find in the New Testament, they'll try to go back to the Old Testament and say, well, see, David did this, or Saul did this, or whatever it was. And we'll try to make them understand, well, that's not an authority for the New Testament church. You're going to the Old Testament. And they'll say, well, y'all are the ones, so you don't believe the Old Testament. No, it's not that we don't believe it. It's that we believe that's not the law we're under anymore. And so I thought that would be an appropriate study since we're in the class topic that we are. Someone, if you would, go ahead and read for me Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. Matthew 5:17. All right, remember this is class. You all jump in here as much as you can, as much as you need to, and if I need to slow down on something, grab a hold of me along the way. But I believe that the proper understanding of the Bible is that the entirety of the Old Testament, after sin came into the picture, was to begin to prepare things for when God would save mankind in the person of Jesus Christ. And that He put in place systems under the Old Testament to bring us to that point. And that when that point came, that we would be under the law of Christ and the church would be ushered into existence. I believe that's the proper understanding of the Bible. Right. Right.
Some of the Old Testament is still binding, but not the law. It was nailed to the cross. Now, thou shalt not kill. That we have
Right.
that today.
Yes.
Thou shalt not commit adultery. We have that today.
Right. There are things in the Old Testament that the laws have not ceased to exist, but they exist because they are repeated in the New Testament law. They're the same under both. Well, you have that Old Testament, and then you have hundreds of years of silence before the New Testament begins. And as the New Testament begins, you have a character named John the Baptist who comes on the scene, and the whole purpose of his ministry is to what? Prepare the way. If they had properly followed and understood the Old Testament, there would not have necessarily been a need maybe for John the Baptist, but they were not. They did not understand it properly. They were looking for a physical kingdom instead of a spiritual kingdom. They were looking for a physical deliverer instead of a spiritual deliverer. And so when Jesus came, a lot of them didn't accept him. And so knowing that, John the Baptist came to begin to help to get people ready. His message was repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. And the idea was change your mind. Repent, remember, that just means change your mind. Change your mind about the Old Testament because the New Testament is about to begin. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, to get them ready for Jesus. And then Jesus comes on the scene. And some are prepared. John had followers. But many, many, many Jews were not. And he begins his ministry, his teaching, and it is unlike anything that they have ever heard. He will go into this message. You just read Matthew 5:17, and immediately following that, he goes through a sermon where he prefaces basically each point by saying, you have heard that it's been said, but I say to you. And what he was doing when he did that was claiming for himself total authority in all areas of religion. And for the people who did not see him as the promised one, as the Messiah, they thought he was just tearing the system up. You've come to destroy the law because you're not the one according to them. And so he let them know, Matthew 5:17, as he begins these teachings, and that's basically what's been called the Magna Carta of Christianity, that as he's beginning these teachings, he lets them know, I'm not here to destroy it. What am I here to do? I'm not here to destroy the law, but what? Fulfill. Fulfill, Matthew 5:17. The literal idea there is that he was the goal of the law. It was always intended to bring us to him, and then he would bring us to God's system of grace by which we could be saved in the church. And so, but for those who didn't appreciate him as that, they struggled, and eventually they would kill him for it. But he let them know that he didn't come to destroy it. He came to be the fulfillment of it. Someone has basically described the Old Testament as being the bud and the New Testament as being the flower. The flower doesn't destroy the bud. The bud was always supposed to become the flower. And that's the way the Old Testament is. The Old Testament was always bringing us to the New Testament, to the new covenant law of Christ. That's why his teaching was so unique. We looked at Matthew 5. It's 3 chapters long. Look over at Matthew chapter 7. And the very last 2 verses, beginning in verse 28, and so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings, these repeated statements of, you've heard it's been said, but I say to you, I've got all authority. Everything hinges on what I say now. That the people were astonished at his teaching. They didn't know what to think. They were blown away by it. For he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. The teachers, the scribes of the day, they would go around quoting everybody else and saying, you know, this teacher says this, and this teacher says this, and this law says this. They didn't claim authority for themselves. They just quoted other people. Jesus came on and said, I'm not quoting other people. I'm the one who's supposed to be quoted. I am the authority. And as it says in verse 28, they were astonished by it. They've never heard anything like it before. And with some saying he destroyed the law, we understand he's not the destruction of it. He's the fulfillment. He's the goal of it. He is the one who presented for us the new law. That's what the Bible's all about. I mean, that's the topic. And the people who didn't understand that, you have whole books written to them, like the book of Hebrews, to make them understand in very clear language that the old law has been done away and the new law is now in place. And how people today in our religious world miss that, when that's what the entirety of the conversation of much of the Bible is about, is mind-blowing to me, as it was that they missed Jesus Christ in the first century. And so we've got to understand, number one, for ourselves, the difference between the Old and the New Testament. And number two, hopefully be able to help other people understand that, because it's at the core of what we do and why we do it. Very important. Mr. Darrell. Right. Exactly. They're making the same mistake that was made back then. They're quoting everybody else, and the only thing that we need to be quoting is what does the Bible say. That's our only authority that we have. All right, so let's get into this. That's kind of my introduction to it. But when we look at the distinction between the laws and which law was binding, I need somebody to read John 1:17 for me. John 1:17. Couple of things that'll help us to understand as we go forward, and it starts right here. John 1:17.
For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.
All right. When you see the word law for the law, and you see it all throughout the New Testament, understand that that's simply a reference to the law of Moses, the Old Testament system. It's just kind of what it was based. That became the nickname of it. That's what it was known as. That's the law. And the New Testament, kind of what it's known as, or its nickname, is the faith. The Bible tells us to contend for the faith, that we need to follow the faith. That's the New Testament system, the faith. It's also referenced to as grace. This is God's grace that has given us this plan of the New Testament. And so when we look at that, it says the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Without Jesus Christ, the Old Testament did nothing. If He didn't show up, if that promise wasn't kept, that was just a bunch of laws that got them nowhere. But the fact that Jesus Christ did come into the world, everyone who faithfully kept the law, they're able to be saved because of the blood of Christ. And then going forward, everybody who follows His law, the law of grace and faith, those who obey it, they're going to be saved going forward. But that all hinged on Jesus Christ coming into the world to make that grace available, John 1:17. And that's why Romans 6:24 says that we're under not the law, but grace. That does not mean that there aren't rules for us to follow. Like I said, when you see the phrase the law, that's talking about the law of Moses. And so when he says we're not under law but grace, that doesn't mean you don't have rules to follow. That means you're under a different system. The law of Moses has expired. It's been fulfilled. The law of Christ, the law of grace, that's the law that we're under now. But it's just kind of referred to by their nicknames there. So you go back, if you would, to Exodus chapter 20. What's the great thing that takes place in Exodus 20? Anybody remember? 10 Commandments. Very good. So you've got the 10 Commandments. We're not going to read them, but begin in verse 3 and going through 17, you have these 10 Commandments that were kind of the overarching structure of the Mosaic system, the Old Testament law that was given to the Jews. But you understand that the 10 Commandments is not all there was to it. There are hundreds and hundreds of laws and regulations and observances and feast days and all kinds of requirements that they had that kind of hinge under those. For us, it kind of be like for America, for our Constitution. You've got the basic elements of the Constitution and the amendments, but there are hundreds and hundreds of laws that hang off of those that pertain to the various specifics of the Constitution. Well, for the Old Testament, the 10 Commandments was like the Constitution for the Jews. God gave those. And then there are hundreds and hundreds of other commands and regulations that they had that were specifics that went in relation to each one of those. And so it has it broken down into basically 10. But you know what? We can take that 10 and we can divide it into just 2 main parts. And so I can tell you tonight, the whole Old Testament, yeah, there's hundreds of laws, but you can put them under a category of 10 general ones. And I can take those 10 general ones and put them under 2. What are the 2? Sins against God, sins against man. And that's why when Jesus was approached and they asked Him, what is the great law? What was His answer? Fellow man. All right. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind. And then right along with that, your neighbor is yourself, how you treat others. That's the whole old law in just 2. There are 2 sections to your 10 Commandments. The way we treat each other and the way that we're supposed to be before God. And so I don't lie to you. I don't cheat you. I don't But also, when it comes to God, I don't have graven images. I don't take the Lord's name in vain. For the Old Testament, they would honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy, some of the religious observances that they had. And so you can divide it all down into two. Well, when it comes to that, the New Testament is the same way. There are a lot of overarching regulations that we have, and there are a lot of subdivisions that are more specific on how we treat each other and responsibilities toward God. You could take every New Testament command and you could put them under those two headings: the way you treat God and the way you treat each other. And it's our responsibility to then look at the New Testament and find out, what does that look like? That's what we're doing in this class: Christian doctrine and practical Christian living. What are my responsibilities to God, and what are my responsibilities to you? Because you can divide it all into those subdivisions. On the Ten Commandments, the first four dealt with Israel, the Jews' responsibility to God, and the last six, I believe, dealt with their responsibilities toward each other. Any questions on that so far? Because we've got some folks that have been here since before I discovered America, and we got some folks who've only been in here a couple weeks. Any extra thoughts or questions or anything? Right.
And we kind of think of the Old Testament as being the law, where they can sacrifice and stuff like that. But it was also a community law.
Yes.
That they needed to go by.
Right. They weren't just God's people and that there were spiritual requirements. They were also a physical nation. There's so many Old Testament laws because it governed their everyday societal behavior and their responsibilities toward God. Much more expansive. Not to say that ours don't. The Bible in the New Testament still tells how an employee is supposed to treat an employer, or an employer is supposed to treat an employee, and how husbands and wives are supposed to treat each other, and parenting, and all of how we're supposed to treat our civil government. That's all there. But there is a tremendous emphasis in the New Testament on the spiritual and our responsibilities toward God. And we need to know both. All right, the Old Testament, very, very limited in nature as far as what it was able to do. It's limited and it was only given to Jews. And an easy way is to help people understand that. When you read it, you'll see Moses begin by saying something like, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." He's speaking to one people, one nation. Now everybody else, as we studied before, were still under responsibility to God. They were under the patriarchy. But one nation of people God picked not to be saved. Anybody could be saved if they obeyed God. But one nation of people were picked to bring Jesus Christ into the world. That's the only sense in which they were God's people. He was going to use them to bring Jesus. And to help to get them there as faithful as possible, because they needed to be ready for Jesus, He gave them a special set of laws. Number one, and I think primarily, to keep them away from what was going on in the world. What was the big problem in the world then? Idolatry. There was idolatry everywhere. And so to keep them pure from that, they're a theocracy. They are my people, and these are their rules, because they're going to be the ones that bring Jesus into the world. And if they ain't ready, nobody's going to be ready. And so we have this law for them. It's a law given to Jews. The Bible lets us know that it was added because of transgressions, Galatians 3:19. Matt, let's go ahead and read that one. Somebody would. Galatians 3:19. I'm not going to be able to read all of these, but I do need to get some of them. This is a good verse if someone's having a hard time understanding that the Old Testament is no longer the law that we're under. This is a good verse to use. Somebody read it. Galatians 3:19. All right. Because the Jewish system and the Mosaic law was all that they knew, and many of them weren't prepared for the change to Christ, He absolutely turned their world on its head. It was everything they knew. It was their religion. It was their finances. It was their culture. It was their whole society. It was their physical government. And then Jesus comes on the scene and says, all of that's gone, and now you got to listen to me. A lot of them struggled. We understand how hard it is for a person sometimes to make that conversion to Christ, to become a Christian and obey the gospel. Because maybe they're making a change from one spiritual kind of way of living to another. That's hard. They had to make a change not only in that arena, but in every facet of their life. They're changing their economy, their entire government, their society. All of this is changing now. And there was a lot of resistance to that. I think we can at least understand that. And so he's turning it all on its head. But you notice there that he says that the law was added because of transgression. Because of the sin in the world, he gave them the law of Moses to help to try to keep them on the straight and narrow. But then it uses a little four-letter word. What is it? That law was given what? Till. T-I-L-L. Until, now that lets me know that it was always going to transition from something to something else. It was temporary. It was until what we have in Jesus Christ. Remember Hebrews 10, 1 through 3, he helps us understand that it was a shadow of good things to come. It was never the substance, it was the shadow, getting them ready for Jesus. And now go over to Galatians 3 with me. Galatians chapter 3. We find out that it was only to last till Jesus came. Go to verse 19. What purpose then does the law serve? They were struggling with that idea of leaving the law of Moses. And so, what purpose does it serve? It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come with whom the promise was made. And it was appointed through angels by the hand of a mediator. Now drop down and look verses 23 through 25. But before faith came, remember that's the nickname for the New Testament, the faith. Before the faith came, we were kept under guard by the law, kept for the faith which should afterward be revealed. Therefore the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ. What's a tutor doing? Ushering in, helping to get you ready. Tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after faith has come, we're no longer under a tutor. Now, how can a person who purportedly today would call themselves Christians can read that and not understand that the Old Testament came to an end and now we're under the New Testament? Blows my mind. But it's very, very clear throughout Scripture. Christ came to fulfill the law, and what's a good verse on Christ nailing it to the cross? I knew my boy would have it. Colossians 2:14. He took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. That's when the transition happened. And so we help people to understand what law is binding today. And with all of that, go over to Hebrews chapter 8 with me. Hebrews chapter 8. Jesus came, and he came in part to establish a better covenant. There's the old covenant that that God gave to Moses and the Jews, but we're under a new covenant. Somebody read for me verses 7 and 8. Hebrews 8, 7 and 8. If the Old Testament had the ability in and of itself, with Jesus never coming, no cross, no bloodshed, none of that, there would have been no need for a new covenant. It would have been perfect, but it wasn't perfect in that it could not save a person in and of itself. It was always going to have to come to an end to bring us to Jesus Christ and the new law, the only way that we could be saved. It was perfect for its purpose. Its purpose was to try to help to keep Israel on the straight and narrow. It was perfect for its purpose. Its purpose was never to save us on its own. That was always leading to Jesus, and so a change always had to happen. It was a national temporary law, and because of that, it was never going to be able to give a spiritual worldwide kingdom. And that's what we have today in the church. None of the 10 commandments as such, as 10 commandments, are a part of the law of Christ. But the principle of them is taught or repeated when it comes to 9 of the 10. 9 of the 10 commandments are repeated in the New Testament. For that reason, we're still under all of those. And I know many of you know, the only one that is not repeated, what is it? Honor the Sabbath day, keep the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Because the transition that happened in the New Testament is that the Lord's Day, the day of worship, no longer is that a Sabbath observance, that's a first day of the week observance. Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, the first day of the week. 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2, the first day of the week is the day of worship today. But the law, serving its purpose, brought us to Jesus Christ, and that's the law that we're under today. Now, when it comes to that law, the law of Christ, Matt, let's go ahead and look at your chart real quick. I knew that tonight I would not have time to look at all of these and read all of these verses, but I wanted you to have the information. And so you look at this chart, and it's just a contrast, if you will, of the old law and the new law that we're under. To maybe another step, help people understand, in addition to all these verses we've looked at the difference between the two. But you look at the old law, and it included one nation, only for Israel. The new law is all nations. I don't care what a person's racial background or what their nationality. We're all one in Christ Jesus. Doesn't matter if you're male or female. Anybody can be saved today. Old law, dedicated by blood of animals. You know the animal sacrifices that took place once for all when it comes to Christ. And then you just go down the list. The priesthood of man, but we have the high priesthood of Christ today. Offerings every year that they had to make, which basically, the way it's been accurately described, is rolled ahead for another year their sins. An animal sacrifice could never take away a sin. All right? It was always going to have to be the sacrifice of God in the form of human flesh. And He had to do it perfectly for it to work. Those animal sacrifices just basically rolled their sins ahead another year to show for another year they've been faithful to God. And then when Jesus died, His blood covered everyone who had been faithful up to that point. And so it was that ongoing, many offering sacrifices once for all with Jesus. It's interesting, the people who struggle or say, y'all are the ones that don't believe the Old Testament, or they struggle to understand the two, they never complain about us not having animal sacrifices up here, killing a goat or whatever it was. They understand, I think, in some point that something has changed. They just need to understand what that change is, and that therefore we're under the New Testament. You continue to go down, and you look at one was written on tables of stone, Hebrews 8, one of them is written on the heart. One of the significant things about the difference is, somebody will say about your family that you didn't have any choice. Like it or not, you got the family that you got. Poor Wyatt. But it is what it is, buddy. All right? Yeah, that's your family. You have no choice. Well, under the Old Testament, they had no choice. You were either born a Jew or you weren't. And what happens sometimes is if you don't have any choice in it, there's a high potential for your heart not being in it. You didn't choose this. You were born this. You can see that with our country. Maybe a lot of people who were born here take it for granted, and we look around us and they're burning cities down. And then I spent a week recently with people almost exclusively who are immigrants, a lot of them from Haiti, Cuba, Colombia, different places like that. And I was absolutely shocked at the number of people who are immigrants who are extremely conservative in their thinking, and it opened my eyes. But the whole reason was, from every one of them, they appreciated what we have, right? They've been to places that are not democratic, not republics. They've seen the worst side of it, and they know how beautiful this is. Exactly. Yep.
It's amazing that he gets to go teach there in the most rural, obscure place.
Absolutely.
Probably on the planet right now.
Now, these people who were born Jews, they didn't always appreciate it. But when it calls it the law written on the heart instead of the law written on stone, you have a choice of whether or not you want to be in this family. That's a decision you make. You count the cost, and you decide, I want to be a Christian. And there's something special about that. You don't take it for granted. At least you shouldn't. Unfortunately, it still happens, doesn't it? There are people who are basically raised in the church. They obeyed the gospel because some friends did around them, or they just thought it was the thing to do, and they never have any spiritual depth or root. There's no heart in it. It's just as wrong. And then we have people who come along who we evangelize and they study and we baptize them. They've got an appreciation for it that maybe some others don't. It's a law on the heart. You decide that you want to be here. Nobody's forcing you to be here. You had a choice. And whenever that's the case, that's a special thing.
Was it you not long ago, I forget who spoke, talking about, it may have been a podcast I was listening to, they were talking about, it was you that stopped me, but China, missionary over there, people would have to ride a bus 9 hours to
Right.
come listen. Have you heard the story?
Yes.
Did you tell it?
I didn't tell it, but I don't remember who did.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead.
Well, anyway, people would get on a bus, sneak away from the China government. Some of them had already been in prison for studying the Bible. Ride 9 hours to get to this guy's hotel room, sneak in there so they could listen to him to speak for 4 or 5 hours, get back on the bus, return back home. Have you heard this? Dan told it? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Great lesson. But yeah, that was just...
Same idea.
I'm sorry.
No,
If anybody missed it, but she had the Bible memorized, or that particular portion. Don't let me butcher it any worse than I already have.
But no, that's exactly right. And I've seen the same thing when I did, and I've heard the same thing. But when I did a 2-week campaign in Guyana, South America, to communities that had never heard the gospel before, no Lord's Church, and people, handicapped people showing up that they put on a flatbed truck and have to help them off and drag them through the rain under a tent to sit there and listen to somebody preach for 2 hours. And people brought to tears because somebody gave them a Bible to be able to take home. Get me fired up. And then I got people who won't show up because the air conditioning might not work one day.
I know Ben preached this stories when they take the roof off and lower it down.
Right.
That dedication to want to share the gospel with somebody or want to hear the gospel.
Yep.
Like we take it for granted.
Right. One of the major differences in the Old and the New Testament, and it's kind of embodied in that phrase, law written on stone versus the law written on the heart. Several other comparisons. There's 14 of them there. That's for your own study. If you're interested in it, take it home. I hope that you'll consider it. But then when it comes to the law of Christ, go over to Hebrews 1 with me. We've just got about 5 minutes left. I'll try to wrap this thing up. God spoke to the fathers in times past, according to Hebrews 1. In other words, the patriarchy, the Old Testament system, He spoke to them in a variety of ways. But things are different now. Somebody read it for me. Hebrews 1, 1 and 2.
God at various times and in various ways spoke in times past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the world.
And so God's message for the New Testament law, for the church, for Christians today, was given in the person of Jesus Christ. He taught the principles of what would govern Christianity. You see it throughout the Sermon on the Mount. You see it throughout your New Testament. You remember when He spoke that a voice from God sounded from heaven. And what did that voice say? This is my Son. Number one, He is who He claimed to be. And based on that, number two, what did the voice say? In whom I am well pleased. I approve Him, stamp of approval. Ms. Brenda, hear ye Him. He's the one that you're to listen to now. And that's the truth of Hebrews 1, verses 1 and 2. But as far as us knowing what to do as Christians and the law of Christ, some people have taken that and stopped right there and said that when it comes to the New Testament, just give me the red letter words. What are they saying? What does that mean? Why would somebody say that? What do they mean by that? Tell me what Jesus said, nothing else matters. And their approach to the New Testament is, well, Paul had an opinion, and John had an opinion, and Peter had an opinion. That doesn't matter. The only part that matters is the red letters. Well, here's your answer for that. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 14. The answer to that is a process called inspiration. God inspired men to continue to write down His will, His commands for the New Testament church. He told them what to say, they said it, or they wrote it down word for word. That's called inspiration. And this is what Paul said about it. 1 Corinthians 14, somebody read verse 37. All right, so if someone thinks that they know what's going on, then they ought to be able to recognize this. I, Paul, I'm an apostle, and the things that I write to you are what? Good suggestions? What's he say? The commandments of the Lord. All right, they're not suggestions. They're not, if you get around to it, here's some helpful pointers. When Paul and the apostles wrote for God, it was just as authoritative as if God was speaking Himself. Remember in the Old Testament, David would say, the Spirit of the Lord spoke by me, and His word was in my tongue. God inspired him, and when he spoke, he was speaking for God. Right. All of it has been revealed. When they spoke and wrote, it's exactly what God wanted it to be. And how much of the message did they give us? All of it. All that we needed.
And I think he even doubles down on that statement in 1 Corinthians and Galatians when he says, if we come back and preach anything else to you, let us be accursed.
Right.
It's the same consistent message.
Absolutely. Galatians 1, 6 through 9, he says, even if an angel comes to you, which is not going to happen, but I mean, just for point of emphasis, even if an angel came to you and gave you some other doctrine, it can't be right. This is it. You let them be accursed. The interesting thing is we have an entire religious movement in our world today which claim that an angel came and spoke to them and gave them, quote, another testament of Jesus Christ. A direct conflict of Galatians 1, 6 through 9, and they claim to believe the New Testament too. You can't have it both ways. And along with that, let's go to 2 Timothy 3, which is the classic text on this idea of inspiration. Verse 16, all Scripture is given by inspiration, which means God-breathed, inspired of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work. Everything that you need to know, and it's contained right here in the New Testament law. All right. Completely muddy the water. Understand, not understand questions. What do y'all got? Sorry, bud? Exactly. As I told you recently, good old Marshall Keeble would say, and I've said it 100 times myself, if somebody gives you a book that they say is required and it has more than the Bible, that's too much. The Bible has everything. If it has less than the Bible, it's not enough, and it's the same, then what do you need it for? The Bible is our inspired authority from God. What else you got? Right. And you know, the serious thing about it is John 12:48. It's the law we're under, and we're going to be judged by it. The words which I have spoken unto you, the same will judge you on the last day. And so it's a heaven or hell issue. Right. Absolutely. All right. Right. It's been March, and I miss a lot of aspects of it. Just the part that we get out here before we even start. And we're still not to where we need to be. But I'm glad we can do what we can. All right, Van. You ready to roll, buddy? 674 will be our song of invitation in a moment. After that, if you have any, let me know, and we'll make some announcements and call on my other Bieber in here, Mr. Wilson, with the flowing hair. Not so much. Me either, buddy. Will you lead us in closing prayer here in a little bit? Yeah, you. Mr. Wilson will lead us in closing prayer. So we've been studying these core doctrines that are just fundamental to so much of what we are about and what we believe and Bible authority, and we studied about the difference between the old and the new law, and that grace came in the person of Jesus Christ to make our salvation possible. And therefore, every time we come together, we want to give people the opportunity to access that grace if they need to do it. It might be that somebody tonight needs to put Christ on in baptism, and salvation is possible. And you don't have to leave here tonight with any doubts, with any questions. You can leave here in Christ. If you believe in Him, willing to repent of your sins, confess your faith, we'll baptize you to have your sins washed away. Or maybe you need to come back home. We studied tonight that the new covenant is a better covenant. One of the beauties of it is that after I've obeyed the gospel, I always have a chance to come home again. Second law of pardon. I don't have to be rebaptized. I'm already in Christ. But I do need sometimes to ask for forgiveness, and I need to come home and I need to pray. And if that's your category tonight, then we would love to help you with that. If anyone needs to respond, won't you do it right now as we stand and sing?